be effective, I've learned early on that I needed to speak out, but speak out with others for change. You can't do it by yourself. You're a fool if you think you can do it by yourself. You'll fail. You need to have a network. You need to have a base, or whatever you want to call it. And I was attracted by the idea of forming a group of trustworthy individuals, because I truly believe that before anything else, your political relationships, your relationships in the area of policy or whatever, I call them political relationships, have to be based on personal relationships that you work. And the women feminists of the 70s had it right. The personal is political. It always has to be. You cannot build anything unless you build things around personal relationships. And the most important thing that you have to develop in those personal relationships in the process of participating and creating change with others is you have to build trust. You have to build trust. Otherwise, you cannot sustain an organization with such demands that are placed on them, particularly the organizations that lead in the area of change, particularly with regards to marginalized groups. I remember once when we had about, with the State Board of Education members, 15 of them elected, most of them conservative, and bless their heart, they did the work to get themselves elected. They have every right to be there. But anyway, some of the young people were real dejected that if we had not really won the arguments that day. And so we congregated in the hall. And some of the young people that need to be nurtured, as you get older, you realize that you have that responsibility over the young members in your network. You need to bring them along. And I remember that they were very dejected. You see it in their faces. And one of them said, God, we lost. And I said, no, we did not lose. If our primary objective is to build trust, to build those relationships that will carry us far, then that's exactly what we did. We won the day. We reinforced the personal relationships on the basis of trust. How do you do that? You need to understand each other. You need to know each other. One of the most important lessons I think that come from world religions is that you need to acknowledge the worth of others and then act accordingly. And that's basically the lesson that I shared with the young people. And I think it helped. It encouraged them. I think you always need to be positive in that way. And encourage the young people by reminding them that when you come together for a good purpose, you're building trust. And that's the element that'll take you far. And I saw that in this organization, that we were going to meet together, and everybody was very friendly and open. And I like the idea of getting to know folks. I got to know Gary a little bit better. I already trusted him. But I think that trust got strengthened, and as a consequence, I think we'll always win. And you have to think in those terms, because this business it can bring you down. This business of confronting powerful forces and being unable to convince them to do otherwise, like the authors and sponsors of these horrible bills. These people are really mean-spirited. It's not just a question of ideas, it's attitude and mean-spiritedness. I don't think they necessarily are interested in negotiating with us. And one of the things, I'm a historian, so one of the things we've talked about that I could bring to the table is information on instances in which Mexicans and African Americans and whites, we can never forget the rest of the folks. We always have to include the rest of the folks. And so one of the things that I've learned in history is that there's been many instances in which people have come together despite differences, and they've found common ground, and they've moved together, built trust, and built important social movements. Let me just share with you a story. Ruth Allen, a labor economist, I'll get to the point, I'll go back to the point in a minute. Let me start with a story. Ruth Allen, a labor economist from UT Austin, who I interviewed, was a fine, fine person, sweet lady. But she was also racist. She didn't mean to be racist, but she was. She wrote an article, or a book, within which she said, basically, we made a mistake when we brought African people and made them slaves in this country. That was a horrible mistake we made. And it's a mistake because now their great children are talking about reparations, about correcting the problem, the rising up and speaking as African Americans. We didn't learn that lesson. Now we're committing another similar error. We're letting many Mexicans come in. They're going to start, their children are going to start making the same claims in American society, justified claims. We are in a major dilemma. Now, I asked myself, I mean, that's important enough that somebody of that stature should say that and basically reflect the feelings and ideas that other people carried. This was not just her ideas. I could give you other instances, other examples in which this horrible reaction appeared. One other, in 1912, State Federation of Labor in Texas got together in San Antonio, of all places, Mexican, a predominantly Mexican community, and the delegation from El Paso, another predominantly Mexican town, submitted a delegation and was unanimously approved, and it basically was an interpretation of Texas history. And they said up until we got here, there was this cosmic junk with tarantulas and a species, a subhuman species called a greaser. That was their interpretation of Texas history. But why? The important question is why? Why were they saying that in 1912 and 1936? They were reacting. They were reacting against organized efforts to create change by Mexicans and African Americans, separately, independent of each, and together. That's my argument, and I could make a good case. And that's what I want to contribute to the Black-Brown Dialogue, to bring that information. I don't know what we can do with it, podcasts perhaps, maybe a textbook or something quicker. But I think we need to not only model behavior, but we also need to talk about other people that have modeled behavior, particularly for the young. We're really interested in working with children and developing curriculum that speaks, among other things, to these instances in history where African Americans and Mexican Americans and whites got together. One great example, this is what I think the TSFL, Texas Federation of Labor, and Ruth Allen were reacting against. In 1909, 1910, one of the most important labor federations in the history of Texas emerged in Central and North Texas. It was called the Renters of America. Later it was called the Land League of America. I don't know, we don't know exactly how many members there were, but there could have been at least 10, 15,000 cotton pickers and land renters, poor whites, poor African Americans, and poor Mexican Americans. And they built a labor federation. That's not to say that there were angels. We all carry those horrible seeds of animosity that are planted in us by society. But they obviously worked against that, and they built something. And I think it's a great example to give to the youth and others, to give them hope that we can build unity around issues that speak to shared experiences, despite the fact that we have some problems between us. That's not to deny that, but there are sufficient examples to model that model behavior, and that we need to do that. That's what I want to do